a ride is out of the question.
Down with this sort of thing. Careful now. The nation holds its breath. Yes!
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Friends in Low Places. And tonight we're going to talk about parenting. I think that we all thought we would be totally gifted at, but actually we're finding out that we're far from that. And we're going to take a look at from sleepless nights to teenage rebellions, and from first steps to first phones. And this is parenting through the lens of a middle-aged man this evening. Mike, Aaron, Niall, welcome. All good? Got over the Christmas okay?
We did.
Great stuff, yeah. Lovely, quiet Christmas. Hope everyone did as well.
Yeah, it was fairly quiet. The parenting skills were definitely needed during the Christmas period, I think, maybe, for some of us. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, parenting. Now, before we get into it, I just have one question to ask you guys. Have you ever, at Christmas, gone on a family holiday to Paris, and you're getting there and you're sitting on the plane, and all of a sudden you realise you've forgotten something, and that's one of your kids and they're home alone? Has anybody lived through that experience?
Oh,
Thank God, no.
Okay. Or you've gone to the pub, let's say Stephen's Day, and you've left the kids at home? No.
Never happened.
As long as we've no. Okay, then you've passed the first test of parenting. Not leaving your children at home alone. Right. We're going to take a look at, first with you, expectations versus the reality of parenting, but we're going to have a quick look at some interesting parenting statistics.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research here, Shawnee, just to see how parenting, I suppose, has changed over the years, or certainly in my time. So back in the 1970s, people became parents much earlier. So first-time mums back then were about 25 years of age on average, whereas now it's closer to 32. Families are smaller now. So once upon a time, Irish families were once the norm. So my mum, for instance, there's 8 in the family, but families today average 1.3 children, so I suppose one child or 2 children. Parenting consistently turns out to be harder than expected, and I certainly can vouch for that, with over 70% of parents saying that it's more emotionally demanding than they imagined. And sleep deprivation is the major factor earlier on. Parents lose about 1.5 to 2 hours of sleep a night, and lack of sleep remains one of the biggest stressors right up until the kids are about 10 years old. Worry generally never goes away. Nearly 60% of parents say they're constantly worried about their children, and that worry actually increases rather than decreases as kids get older. Childhood itself looks very different, and certainly I did a little bit of coaching there recently with my son's teams, and I can vouch for this. Kids today spend about half as much unsupervised outdoor time as kids did back in the 1980s and 90s. And technology is the big modern anxiety. Over 90% of teenagers have a smartphone by the age of 12 or 13, and phones and social media top the list of parental worries. And yet, despite exhaustion, stress and constant worry, over 85% of parents still say parenting is the most meaningful thing in their lives. So I suppose parenting expectations versus realities, lads. So what did you expect about it that turned out to be true, and what took you completely by surprise? So maybe starting with yourself, Shawnee.
I don't think there's anything that took me completely by surprise. That might make me sound as if I was totally prepared for it, which I absolutely wasn't. But it's a tough one. I wasn't prepared when we. So I suppose we should maybe give the listeners I have 2 kids who are now 16 and 19, so that's approaching the adulthood stage. I think the first thing for me, which I caught me off guard is the day we brought my son home from the hospital, and we had this another person in the house, and it's like, so what do you do now?
It's a very
You know?
strange feeling, yeah.
That's something I vividly remember, and I kind of wasn't really prepared for, because you think about at that stage, you know, you go through the whole 9 months and the birth, and you're buying the baby clothes, and you're thinking about the christening maybe and all that stuff, and then you know, you get the nudge at 4:45 in the morning, and it's time. And you head off to the hospital, and then the others, I can't remember how many hours, but I think we get back to the house a couple of days later, and then you have this little tiny little package in a baby seat, and then you put it down and you go, well, what do you do now? I think that was the thing I kind of wasn't prepared for. And then I think everything else kind of just comes naturally, if that makes sense.
Mike, what about you? Anything unexpected? Anything expected?
Well, just for context, I suppose I have 2 girls, 23 and 13. What was unexpected was, I suppose, having grown up in a house full of boys, suddenly having a house full of women is a different concept. Well, I spend a lot of time in the garden and in the shed.
Poor Mike, house full of women.
I think from a younger point of view, I suppose, as you know, our eldest lady is fostered, so she arrived as a fully grown 8-year-old. So we didn't have all of the initial part of bringing a child to that stage. Lily, our youngest daughter, arrived on after that, and we had all the fun that goes with that, all the sleepless nights. Experienced a few of them, but did I say I regret them? No, definitely not. Did I regret any stage of parenting so far? I don't think so. Could I have made some better choices on certain things? Definitely. But I think it is, we all have different styles, even between myself and my partner, we have different styles in how we parent, I think. And somewhat that surprised me along the way. I thought I would be the strict father figure of the household. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. But yeah, it's a hard one to really say, you know, from as you said, everybody's experience is different, I think. And I don't know, we all go through similar stuff, but as I said, I don't know, would I be giving anybody advice on this is how we did it? So,
What about yourself, Aaron?
It's a
Anything
fair point, Mike.
unexpected?
Well, I think, everything was a bit of a shock, because I have 2 kids, 17 and 13, a boy and a girl. My wife is the calm one in the relationship, and I'm a bit dramatical, as you all know, bit of a drama queen. Or full drama queen, whatever way you want to put it. So yeah, it was all a bit of a shock. We were in and out of hospital for quite a while, Temple Street, but everything worked out fine in the end. Maybe coming out of hospital the first day, I actually just could not get the car seat to work. I couldn't get him into it. So I didn't want to cut off his blood supply, but the strap was a bit tight. But in general, yeah, we've kind of yin and yang in this relationship, but they're 2 different styles of parenting. So Suzanne is the firm one, and I'm kind of, I suppose, a bit of a pushover at times, but I'm getting slightly better. But there's no manual, sure there's not, lads. So.
Sure. Yeah, so myself, I have 2 children, James and Maggie. So James is 11 going on 12, and Maggie's 10 going on 11. So there's been loads of surprises as far as I'm concerned. So parenting, in some respects, I was completely unprepared for, and there was loads of surprises. But one of the very first surprises I remember was when James was born. And James ended up being a forceps delivery. Now, I was a forceps delivery myself. So obviously they carried you down to the theatre, etc., etc., etc. So I remember anyway, they're doing their thing. I was at the top, didn't really quite see what's going on. So eventually they get James out and they hold him up. Now, I didn't know this, but when you're a forceps delivery, it's quite natural for your head to swell up. So James's head looked like a rugby ball. I remember, so they held the baby up and they said, "Look at your beautiful baby boy," and everyone. And of course, I was absolutely shocked. I was looking at James and going, "What's wrong with the child's head? And why is no one referencing that there's something wrong with his head?" So needless to say, it took me a while to ask the question about the head, but eventually then they kind of calmed me down and told me. So again, that was the very first shock. But certainly from my perspective, when I got James, and I don't know if there's any parents kind of prepared for this, how it impacts your sleep, I think is for me probably the initial big shock to the system, you know. And it's gas, you probably never get back to that sleep that you had before you have kids, even as the kids are growing up, you know. So yeah. So what's next, folks?
So, Mike, what's been the hardest part of parenting?
Oh, God. What has been the hardest part of parenting? I think making sure you don't fuck it up yourself, you know.
What's the answer to that
for
question,
me,
Mike?
making sure you do the right thing. What that is on the day, who knows? But reflecting back on it, did you make the right decisions? Did you give the right advice? Did you correct them properly? For me, I think it's, you know, even looking at parenting when children are very young versus teenagers now, I think it stretches you in different ways. Your style of parenting, I suppose, matures a bit as well as you mature along with the kids. But yeah, like the demands are different, probably a bit more physical when they're smaller because you're running around after them. You know, they constantly want to go here, go there. As they turn into teenagers in this day and age, it's more trying to get them to come to places with you is the problem.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know what you think yourself, guys. Like it often depends, I think, on the child as well and their age, how hard things are and what they're into. You know, like we have one that's mad into horse riding and could spend every day doing it.
Brilliant. It's great to have.
You know,
Great to have.
okay. The upside to that is great. They're getting outside. It's not screen time, and they're getting fresh air, and that's kind of the way we look at it. Is, you know, that's what they're into. Some kids are mad into soccer, into sports, others activities. I think you just kind of have to roll with it, and they find their own thing eventually that suits them more so than it suits you. You know, don't think I was ever a soccer dad. Even though I spent a lot of time playing sports when I was young myself, but it just wasn't what the kids were into, you know. I suppose, as you said there, Niall, at the early stages, sleep deprivation, you know, bit of worry maybe at times around, are they okay? Maybe sometimes you feel guilty around not spending enough time with them on certain things or not being able to show up. One bit of advice I got from one of my ex-bosses many years ago was, if you're going to say you're going to do something, make sure you do it with your kids.
Follow through, yeah.
Follow through. Whether that be you're going to show up to something or whether you're going to do something with them. If you tell them you're going to do something at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, make sure you're there to do that thing at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Time pressures then as well, I suppose. You know, we all work at different things, and sometimes that takes up 40 hours of our week. Maybe when you add commuting on top of that, it's a bit more. That's 40 to 50 hours a week that you're not knocking around the house or racing back to be at something. And sometimes it's easy to just say, I'll give that a miss, you know. But I think it's important to be there. Even if you're late, it's important to be there. You know?
Good point, Mike. Yeah, very important
just
indeed.
to get that balance right. It's like I suppose that steady state of being dependable as well. I think we all want our kids to feel they can rely on us for things and feel that they can come to us if they've got problems. The worrying part, I suppose, of raising girls is, as a friend of mine once told me, was, oh, great, you had a girl. At least I have boys. I've only one Willie to worry about. Now you've got all the Willies to worry about.
Oh my God!
Sorry, that's a bit crude, I know. But yeah.
You mentioned there just in terms of being, but isn't it peculiar in the sense that, and again, I don't know if you agree on this or not, but like parenting in one sense is probably the hardest thing that you will ever do.
Definitely, yeah.
And probably the most important thing that you will ever do. Yet at the same time, we're almost completely unprepared for it.
You're totally unprepared, yeah.
In the sense, and this always struck me afterwards as peculiar. And again, don't get me wrong, your own parents give you advice and other parents give you advice and all of that type of stuff. But there's probably, to my mind, a requirement almost to talk to younger people about parenting and the responsibility and importance about it. In other words, we probably require almost an education on how to become good parents much, much earlier in the day so that you're kind of better prepared. So again, that was definitely something that kind of struck me as peculiar after I became a parent, in the sense that it's the most important thing I'm ever going to do. Yet, in some respects, I'm as unqualified or as uneducated about it as anything that I've ever approached in kind of my life. A big surprise for me when I became a parent, and this was one that took me by complete surprise, was when the kids were born, doing the very mundane stuff with them, so changing nappies, feeding them, all of that really day-to-day mundane stuff. I enjoyed that fantastically well. And I never saw that coming. So in other words, I never thought that I would enjoy changing a nappy, as for instance. I always thought that was going to be something horrible I'd have to do it. But so again, that was something that I was kind of unprepared for almost.
I used to try and time the nappies so that Susanna be there, but no, I did change a few, but I'm being straight up with you there. So.
Yeah, I'd have to chime in with you there now. I found that part not really difficult. I also, I can't ever remember being absolutely exhausted when they were that young and seemed to manage to balance work and doing all the kids stuff as well, and exploding poos at 7 a.m. when you've got your suit on and you have to go and change your suit, and you just kind of just shrug your shoulders and accept it the way it is. Like, and I think for me, like, as they're 16 and 19 now, the hardest parts of parenting change as they get older. Whereas when they were young, it was just the energy and managing that. And then as they kind of slightly get older and they move into teenagehood, the hardest part for me has been watching them change. Going from a kid to kind of, I don't want to say adult, but finding who they are and letting them change. And not hanging on to that, the kid part of it. And then as soon as they go from 13, 14 to 16, 18, 19, that's been hard for me, because then, they starting to become adults and themselves, and they are no longer kids, even though they're still you're still their parent. That's been kind of difficult for me. Just been allowing them to be themselves and be almost a completely different person from when you knew them when they were that young. Yeah. That's been quite difficult for me to kind of handle.
The other thing sometimes I think can happen is you can overestimate your importance as well. So that saying where they say it takes like a village to raise a child. I think that's definitively true. Don't get me wrong, I think parents play a very, very important role, but there's lots of other people, and particularly as a child gets older, that play very, very important roles in terms of the kind of child's upbringing. And I suppose that, again, took me a while to get my head around that, you know, it wasn't just the parents, it's all of these other people, and that they're very influential. And I suspect as a child gets older and older, you know, peers and stuff like that become increasingly more important in terms of how someone turns out.
100%. And I guess you see that when you're doing coaching the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something that I saw, because it was mentioned there in the stats, but like the kids nowadays don't really go out and play in the same way that we used to the point like it's actually impacting them on a kind of some kids on a physical level, so they can't run or jump or do things like we took very much for granted. So again, it's, you know, and again that comes back to kind of devices and all of that type of stuff, you know.
Well, we just used to go out like on our bikes or whatever. Your mother would say your dinner's at 7 o'clock and you came back at 7 or whatever, and there was no like questions about it. I mean, types of parenting today, like, have a think about this one, like the helicopter parent. That's probably me. You're constantly trying to see what they're doing, who they're involved with, and you're just creating an anxiety epidemic for. I suffer a bit of anxiety anyway, but they reckon that you're worrying too much about what your kids are doing instead of letting them be free to express themselves, you know. That's where I have a struggle with it now at the minute, you know.
Yeah, but it's nice to see your kids respond to other people who they interact with, you know what I mean? Our youngest lady currently is doing a lot of horse riding, so she gets a lot of guidance from instructors and things like that, and how she responds to them. And sometimes they might give out and say, hey, you did that wrong. Remember we said we're going to do it this way. It's kind of a little bit heartwarming, I think, a little bit as a parent, to watch that interaction and how they respond to somebody else. You kind of say, well, you know, did I reared them right?
It's very rewarding, yeah. I mean,
but the mental aspect as well of parenting, I think you're constantly, as I said earlier, second guessing yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Maybe we take on more than we need to worry about, you know, as well, a little bit. Should have more trust in them.
I think the other thing, though, is I think that you should be aiming to be a better parent as you go, because obviously you get more experience and you learn, and like you learn from your mistakes. And the other thing is, I mean, you will make mistakes, so like you can't be too hard on yourself for making mistakes either, because the law of averages suggests that you will make a mistake. The other thing, and again, parents have different views on this, but if you do make a mistake, I think it's important that you admit that mistake to your kids, you know what I mean? Whereas some people, it's kind of like never going to admit I made a mistake and so on and so forth. The other thing I would say is, and again, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, but I think parents nowadays, we have a lot of kind of information available to us on parenting. So there's never been as much out there, but at the same time, there's so much out there that sometimes it's hard to get to the stuff, I suppose, that, you know, is valuable or kind of makes sense or whatever. Whereas I would, to a certain extent, when I look at my kind of parents' generation, I'd be a little bit easier on them, because I think they had less available information and kind of education and how to be a parent. So I think we have to judge ourselves a little bit differently in that respect.
I completely
Can I ask
agree.
guys?
good point, yeah.
No, and it's different exposure that kids have these days to what we had back in the day. Like you say, Niall, I mean, there's that's why I think the parenting is a little bit different, because they're exposed to a lot more. Kind of from a global perspective, if you like,
Probably too much
than we were when we were kids. Like, I suppose when we were going out, at least from my perspective, my parents were, as strict as they were still quite good in giving us our freedom, because in the knowledge that we were always going to be in this kind of same environment around tip, if you like, and we weren't really going to be exposed to anything outside of that. Whereas nowadays it's the complete opposite. They're exposed to a lot more things while they're on their telephone beside the fire.
Yeah, it's probably too much. Like we had back in 2 Channel, and you might have seen the news once a day. Like you wouldn't be coming in to watch the news, but you weren't getting it the whole time thrown at you. Sure you weren't, you know.
So the best bits or the best parts of parenting then, Aaron?
I suppose seeing your kids' achievements. I mean, my boy is mad into his music. He's a great bass player, and he's played with a few bands. They've done a He's with Tit Music Generation. He loves it. He found this thing, and my girl is into drama and art, and she's gives them confidence when you see them interacting with different groups and stuff. They're just like, you can't believe it at times. They've come from, like, it feels like a year or two ago they were toddlers, and now they're young adults. So yeah, kind of proud moments there. Yeah, very good. So it's all the little achievements along the way. So we have exams this year as well, leaving cert, and it's all the little steps along the way, isn't it? So yeah, they're great. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, best parts for you?
Oh, yeah, again, seeing them achieve things obviously is definitely a part of it. Seeing them develop into young adults, teenagers, I suppose we're lucky in the sense that I think we all have reasonably well grounded children that are not they don't get into trouble too much, and I suppose you'd like to think that they are a reflection of ourselves, somewhat. Sometimes I worry. Sometimes I worry that they might be too much. Yeah, exactly.
No
we were talking
comment.
about parenting earlier. Like, do we mimic our own parents' style of parenting?
I presume you
don't know
do.
that either, but I've often found myself saying things to my kids that my parents used to say to me.
Yeah,
and you do have
definitely.
to remember, I suppose, that we're not there to be their friend either. We are there to be their parent, and there's a fine line between those as well. I think
Is it possible to be both?
Probably quite too much. Yeah.
Yeah, to a point. They should have their own friends.
Okay. Shawnee, best parts for you?
Yeah, there's been a lot. Like I can remember the day my son learned how to ride a bike without the what do you call them, guys? I can't remember.
Stabilizers.
Stabilizers. Little achievements like that, and 10 years later, he arrives home with his driver's license.
Yeah,
that's the best thing. Where you can see them how they grow, and I love seeing them overcome a challenge. And they do overcome challenges because you support them, as a parent. You don't you give them as much support as possible, but they achieve it on their own. If I give an example of my daughter, who was never really a sporty person, but we always insisted that you need to have some physical activity. And so a couple of years ago, we kind of laid down the law and said, if you don't choose a sport, we'll choose one for you. And I play tennis, and said, come on, let's play tennis, and that way, you can play with me. So we sent her to lessons, and she absolutely loved it, and she's pushed herself really far, and wanted more lessons, and now she's able to whoop my ass. It's that's when good parenting comes back to bite you, when your daughter's kicking your ass in the tennis court. But it's really nice to see that. That's kind of when you've kind of done something, and you've pushed them a bit, even though they haven't wanted to do it. Yeah, there's a nice ending to it, which is really cool. And I probably maybe the best part of parenting is coming now for me, because now they feel they're able to sit down and have an adultish conversation with me. Just maybe take my daughter for lunch and have a one-to-one, which is really nice. And yeah, like you said, Mike, there's a fine line between being their friend and being parenting, and you need to be on that side of parenting. But there's something nice when they feel they're able to kind of talk to you and tell you their woes, or talk about boyfriends, or she doesn't have any boyfriends yet. That's what she tells me anyway. But that's the kind of, I guess, the best part about parenting, with the being able to communicate, being able to have kind of bilateral conversation, and them being able to feel that they can talk to you when they have things in their mind. That's for me anyway. That's the best part of parenting. Yeah, and for you, Niall?
Yeah, there hasn't been. It's been all pretty positive now. And again, as I say, that surprised me. I certainly didn't realize or didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I have, and to take as much value out of it as much as I have. And again, I can really kind of speak for myself, but once my kids were born, I don't think there's anything that had the impact on me in my life that they did. I was literally changed, in that moment. So, and it's been, there's been challenges, don't get me wrong. It hasn't all been easy, far from it, but certainly in terms of kind of taking enjoyment and happiness and all of that type of stuff, I would say it's been transformational in that sense. So again, like the day-to-day stuff, the slightly more boring stuff necessarily, I take a lot of enjoyment out of that, and I've continued to take enjoyment. So whether it's just going out the back and kicking a football with James or whatever, you know what I mean, or doing something with Maggie, it's fairly mundane kind of day-to-day stuff, but it's all very enjoyable, so to speak. They're all highlights,
I'll ask a very controversial question. Would you feel you have a favourite?
In terms of the two kids?
Well, I'll ask Ollie that question, yeah.
No, mate, obviously no.
So it's funny. You find it's funny you asked that, okay? Because 2 days ago, my daughter was standing in front of the fire, and I told her to move out in front of the fire so the rest of us get a bit of heat. About 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, my son came around and stood in front of the fire, and then she goes, "Oh, how come you're letting him stay?" And I thought, well, he's my favourite. And that just started the whole conversation. No, I don't have a favourite. Obviously not.
Yeah, I think you have to remember they're individuals with their own kind of strengths and weaknesses. So you can, I suppose you can have more in common with one person than another person, so that can make certain things easier or harder. But don't know necessarily, I would say.
Well, you have different clicks with each one,
Yeah,
So-
and again, for me, I'm not dissimilar to you, Mike. I grew up with a house of boys, so having a daughter, in a sense, was an extra kind of a challenge. So I've a bit more to learn in that respect. But at the same time, again, it's been kind of very rewarding, so to speak, in terms of having to do that,
And they say, what did they say? They say boys will wreck your house, but girls will wreck your head.
Wreck your head, yeah.
I go around with a wrecked head every day.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say that's been the case for me so far. My daughter does wreck her head with the untidiness of her bedroom, but no, I think it's been even Steven so far to do. But anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Parenting then versus now. So in comparison, this look at how we were parented and versus as kind of how we are parenting. And we kind of already touched on this a little bit. For me, at least how I was parented, I was fairly strict parents, relatively disciplined, and we were 6 kids, so there needed to be some order in our household in order for things to function right. But I was thinking about this, and even with the strictness and the discipline and everything, and again we touched on this a little bit, we still had that freedom, to be able to go out and stay out, and like you say, come home for lunch and go home for dinner, but you still had this. There wasn't this kind of over parenting, more of a laissez-faire type thing. That's if you scratch your knee, you scratch your knee. It does not bring up to the emergency services for
Bring the care doc, yeah.
Bring the care doc, yeah. If you know what I mean. I think that was. I think nowadays maybe it's a bit different, where everything, there's a bit more of a micromanagement style approach maybe on parenting that I see in comparison to to how at least I was raised. I also maybe there's a bit more respect for elders maybe back in the day than what I can see. I can name any names. I think the parenting was almost kind of better handled. Maybe would I be wrong in saying that when we were growing up? What do you think?
Parents
Or
are probably a
handled
bit
differently, I
stressed,
suppose.
you know. I think the parents were a bit less stressed back then. They didn't have as much stuff getting fired at them, you know. That's just my take on it. But obviously now they're back to social media and internet. But maybe they had less stuff in the head, you know. Possibility.
The external factors or the external concerns weren't as big as what they are now. You know what I mean? See there in the news over the Christmas there for 2 girls missing from Tipperary town. Won't you see that? Yeah. Like, I think the furthest we'd have strayed was Care on our bikes. So, now they can get to where are they? County Meath someplace, you know, on the train.
Yeah.
You know, don't know of any stories like that when we were growing up. I think, would you have said parenting was nearly a little bit easier because they could be parents, they could be stricter. You can't be as strict these days. You know,
Well, like,
I did a time
like
in boarding school, and people are amazed that we used to get the letter even when I was in school. You know,
That's the early 90s, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but you I mean, in fairness, in lots of situations, you had stay-at-home mums and stuff like that. So in essence, there was more available time to be parents. Now, it was more often than not, it was the woman that did it. Whereas I think parents nowadays, in most situations, both parents are kind of work. So there's less available time to be parents. And then to Mike's point, there's probably more stuff that you kind of need to be worried about almost. I'm not quite sure. I mean, this is so I kind of, and again, you do this, don't you, when you become a parent yourself? So you kind of look at your own parenting and you kind of go, well, what do I do that's the same, and what do I do that's different? And if I'm doing something that's different or the same, do I know why I'm doing that either way? Type of stuff. So I would have imagined that I would be. And not that my parents were particularly strict, but they were strict-ish. You know, they were of their time, I suppose you would say. So I would have always imagined that I would be a less strict parent. But what I've noticed is, in some areas, it's arguable that I'm more strict. And then in other areas, so I've picked and chosen, I suppose, where I'm stricter or where I'm not stricter. Now, whether that makes me less strict or more strict in overall sense, I don't exactly know. So it's gas where there was flexibility with my parents. There's a lot less flexibility in some ways with me, and then maybe where there was less flexibility with them, there's a lot more kind of flexibility with me. So it's kind of interesting from that point of view. The other thing I would say is, and I think this again, you know, I think the church was quite influential in terms of our parents and in terms of how we were parented, which is obviously less of a factor nowadays, you know.
Family structures are different now as
Yeah.
well. You know,
Yeah.
But like, I've had this conversation with my mother where she's nowadays, like, where she's given out to me for being too strict with my kids.
You see,
Yeah. And I go, like, what are you saying? You were 10 times more strict with me than I ever was with them. She's like, yeah, you can't get them to do that. Like, oh, no, finish the dinner. She's finishing the dinner. You cooked it. Oh, she's fine. She's grand. Whereas, you know, we're growing up, you didn't leave the table until you finish your plate. Especially if there's Brussels sprouts, right, Mike?
Exactly. I was just going to say my mother would nearly be more inclined to insist that I put the dishes in the dishwasher than the grandkids do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. And you make them bring in the wood. Yeah, I do. The chores, you know. And
but it's like you probably also parent a bit differently for your first, second, and I'm sure third and fourth kid if you have it. So, like, you know what I mean? So, like, the reality is you change your parenting style from child to child as you go as well, you know, which obviously all has impacts, you know. Because I think sometimes we think that we parent each kid the same way, and we don't necessarily. And probably when it comes to the fact that they're individuals anyway, that's probably not a bad idea, I suspect.
But what's the biggest challenge then for parenting today then for you guys?
The anxiety about what's going on in the world. I mean, the social media, the news, hoping their future will be okay. Sometimes you kind of go mad stuff going around your head about that, but just making sure they're going to be okay. I suppose you can just day by day. It's learning curve, isn't it? Do you know, roller coaster. 2 words for you. That's it.
Yeah,
Connectivity.
I think I think nowadays, whereas if there was something going on in school or whatever, and we got home, and you were home, you were generally away from that or whatever that was. Whereas nowadays with social media, like the problem is kids can't actually get away from that.
Get away
you
from
know
it,
what I mean? If there's something, so I do think that that's a concern. Just the whole kind of digital side of things, etc.
That's true.
Like most kids these days know what their friends, 10 of their friends had for breakfast before they even get out of bed in the morning. So,
Yeah, and it's also probably fair to say that childhood is a shorter window now than it used to be.
That's true. That's a really good point,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah. Fortunately.
Have you ever heard yourself saying to your kids, when I was growing up, my parents da.
Back in my days, a favourite one of mine, and Kaylee says, "Oh my God, here we go."
Yeah. My daughter
Yeah.
says, it was a different time, Dad. It was a different time.
yeah. Or
Yeah,
I
it's-
start saying something and I get told back to me going, yeah, now you're going to tell me that you had one pair of shoes between you and you all had to walk to school in one pair of shoes.
Here's another one. We were driving back from Clonmel one of the days, and there's a new housing estate. And I said, "God, when I was a kid, that was all fields." That's another one. So,
Yeah.
the simple, stupid statements that come out with, isn't it? You know. So
Okay. So what has parenting taught us so far?
absolutely nothing. I'm only messing. Loads.
Yeah.
I suppose to be more, basically, you have to share your experiences and take advice from your own parents and people around you. I mean, it's a daily learning curve, isn't it, lads? Just be more open-minded, acceptance, and do your best, basically, isn't it? Me, anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
as 3 guys heading into your 50s, I would be concerned if I was you. Your children are going to be choosing your
I have
nursing.
another 12 months.
So treat them well. I don't know, guys. Parenting, I think, teaches us all different things. But I suppose at the end of the day, when you look back, what's it all about? Long hours of work, stresses and strains. At the end of the day, when you close the door on Christmas Day, who's around you?
Family, yeah.
Yeah.
Me, it
Point.
becomes about that, and maybe that's when you let them off with the things you shouldn't be letting them off with. So pull us on the heartstrings a bit, maybe. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Niall?
Patience.
Yeah, I think
Patience.
sometimes you got to fight your urges in terms of wanting to protect your kids, because ultimately I think the job of a parent longer term is to develop a kind of a fully functional adult that can cope in the world and succeed in the world, I suppose. So, to get there, you probably have to learn things and make mistakes and all of that type of stuff. So I suppose it's to give them the freedom to make those mistakes, but at the same time keep them relatively safe. So I think that sometimes that's a kind of a tricky balance to get right, because you can overparent or you can underparent, and it's, are you kind of on the right track, and I suppose kind of check in as you go along. But again, I think I'm a reasonably good dad, but I still think I have a lot of room for kind of improvement. So I think if you can kind of keep that, you know what I mean, and continue to improve, I think then hopefully you'll turn out to be a decent parent, and the kids will turn out to be. But as I say, it's not, and this is something I've realised, it's not just down to the parents. There's a lot of people involved in bringing up a kid, and they're all pretty influential and pretty important.
Yeah. And
Do you think?
I'll just go back to a point that I mentioned earlier. No, go on, Mike. Go.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. I was going to say, do you think that we're parents longer, or people are going to become parents for longer? Because, with housing crisis, cost of living,
Absolutely.
our children going to be living with us till they're 30.
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
It's happening already, isn't it, Jack? You see it every day on the news, yeah? Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know, because we don't not really experiencing that same thing over here as you guys are experiencing it. So
Yeah.
and also over here you can be much more. I suppose our kids have parents from 2 different countries, and we live in another country, and I work in another country. So there's already this kind of mindset that you might not necessarily stick around to be staying with the parents on a long-term basis. I don't think it's I think Ireland's a bit unique, I think, in that respect.
Yeah, but I think across and certainly in the developing world, I think people are having kids later now anyway. So in the sense, you're going to be a parent until you're older, just by definition. So I think certainly in terms of like people having kids in their 40s and so on and so forth, that's very much increased in the last number of years, etc.
Yeah, and I have a good friend of mine, Chris, and he's given me permission to mention his name, and he's 52, and he just recently had a baby. He has a 3-month-old baby.
2. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Exactly.
Swiss Lucha.
Absolutely.
Our place, yeah.
And
yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And for him, it's not a problem. This is fantastic. This is great. But he also remarkably has the energy of a 20-year-old. So this is like not a problem. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and the other thing with obviously when people had big families like 5, 6, 7 and beyond kids, I can't possibly get my head around how people coped with families because, as I say, 2 is to the pin of my collars in terms of my limits. So I wouldn't have been able to handle any more kids, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. I mean, again, our house was 6 kids.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it when you're a kid.
You don't know.
Yeah, when you're 6 kids in front of you, and you have to manage 6 expectations, 6 different characters, 6 different tantrums or whatever. It's like that's managing a small to medium sized company, isn't it? Really, almost.
Okay.
Yeah. Who do you fire first? Yes. So I think that's pretty much a wrap up, guys, on this episode on parenting. Any final thoughts? What advice would you give to anybody who's just about to embark on?
Don't listen to anything we said here today.
Yeah, plough your own furrow.
Yeah.
Strap in for the ride, lads. Strap in for the ride.
Never buy a kid's meal. It's overpriced and it's not worth it. Just let them eat off your plate. That's my piece of advice. Never buy a kid's meal. And with that, thanks for tuning in. We shall be back with a new episode shortly. And we hope everybody has a really good week, wherever you're listening to this, be it on Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, the whole lot. Thanks for tuning in. And so it's bye from Sean.
Bye from Aaron.
Mike.
Bye from Niall.
All right. Be good.
Yeah,
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Suppose a ride is out of the question.
Down with this sort of thing. Careful now.